Hey everybody, RPG here. Today I'm going to show you guys around the Xbox emulator within Batocera. So I've been getting a lot of questions about Xbox emulation over the last few months, so I really want to take the time to actually put together a video where I not only talk about Xbox emulation and the emulator, but also show you guys around it. So we're going to jump into Batocera here on my HP Pavilion gaming PC. I'm going to be able to show you the performance of games run through this emulator, the different settings and options that you can kind of tweak along the way, as well as how it compares to other emulators out there. So I think the best comparison is going to be Xbox to PlayStation 2, because these were two consoles that were released around the same time and they competed against each other for years. So to compare them now, years later, when we're talking about emulation, really makes a lot of sense, and I think it's going to give you a good understanding of the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of the Xbox emulator. So let's jump into it. All right, so we're going to jump into Xbox here in Batocera. So here's my collection. First and foremost, what I want to point out here, and this really isn't anything that hinders the performance in any way, but Xbox emulation is fairly new. I don't mean new as in it came out yesterday, but it hasn't been around as long as some of our classic emulators. So when we start scraping the data for Xbox games, sometimes you'll find your data, sometimes you won't. So here you can see I have Amped 2, Amped 1, and they have all of the data available. You can see I have the logos on the right hand side. I have the video preview on the left here in the screen. I have the box art down in the bottom left corner. It tells me who created the game, which is Microsoft, because this was only released on the Xbox. And then we also have the description and rating in the bottom right corner. So we have literally all the data that we would typically have in any other collection for emulation. So as we scroll down though, you'll notice that we will find some where there's no data whatsoever. So this one is Blinks 2. I have absolutely nothing on this. I have no screenshot, no box art, no description, just literally it's as if I just dropped this in here and never scraped it. So that's normal because there just isn't all that data populated in yet. So this may change over time. I've actually had this collection put together now for about 2 months. And when I first scraped it 2 months ago, I had significantly less titles populate in with data than I have right now. So that just goes to show you that you're constantly getting new access to data for this collection because it is getting more and more popular now. So that's not really pertaining to emulation, but it is worth mentioning here as we are just starting to dive into the Xbox collection. So you can see as I scroll down, the majority of these actually do have a fair amount of data. Now the Burnout games, actually, I found that they weren't in here originally and they were recently added in. So Screen Scraper is actually adding in a lot more data now for Xbox. So we are going to see some changes with that. But I want to show you guys first and foremost what the experience is like on here when you emulate a game. So let me find a good game that's really going to give us a pretty decent understanding of what the capabilities are. So let's jump into, let's see, let's do Halo. I think most of us are familiar with the game Halo. Super popular game franchise. They're still making them today. In fact, there's a new one coming out very soon. So we're just going to jump in here. I've actually never played this game on emulation before. So looking forward to seeing what the experience is like. All right, so I just skipped ahead a little bit just because the opening of this game is a little bit slow as we're testing out our shields and controls and all that. But I just jumped into the actual gameplay here where the ship's being attacked. So just moving around here, you can see that the controls are perfect. Now I am using actually a PlayStation 2 style controller versus an original Xbox. Pretty much has the same capabilities, just a different layout. But you can see here graphics are phenomenal, 100% on point to the original console. Performance is great, there's no lags or anything like that, which you'll see a little bit more here. But cutscenes are actually a great way to gauge your performance as well, because cutscenes do have a lot to them. They are a little bit demanding on your system, so you'll oftentimes see on a system that can't handle the game properly or the emulator's off, you'll see some issues in the cutscenes. You'll see lags, audio cutouts, screen tearing, stuff like that. You don't see any of that on screen right now. So Now I do have this in 4:3 aspect ratio. I can stretch this and it won't hinder the performance in any way. I'll show you that shortly. But for right now, we're going to keep it in 4:3, which was the original aspect ratio at that time for Xbox games. So I'm going to cut through the cutscene here. I think he's going to hand me a pistol so I can actually show you guys a little bit more of the gameplay here for Halo. Alright, so again, working perfectly here. So let me find some. So it's just 100% on point to the original console. There's no delays, lags, anything like that here. Just getting a feel for the controls. It's been a while since I played this, but Halo is one of my favorite franchises of all time. Alright, so there's my B button. So if I wanted to pick up his gun, how would I do that? X. There we go. Alright, so I got his plasma rifle. But yeah, you can see everything is perfect here. We're not running into any issues at all. So I'm going to jump out of Halo, and we're going to jump into another title real quick, just to, again, show you what the performance is like here. Alright, so hotkey and start brings me back to my main menu here. You can see we have a bunch of games. Let me find another one that's really good. Let's see. Alright, so we're going to jump into WWE Raw 2 now, which is obviously a wrestling game. So we're going to test out the performance in here. So we'll let it go through the loading page here. And we'll just jump into a basic singles match. Alright, so you can see not a hitch in the performance whatsoever here. Super smooth. I did make the screen a little bit bigger here. I didn't do a full stretch to 16:9 ratio, but did make it a little bit bigger than the regular 4:3. So let me just skip through the entrances just because it's copyrighted music. Now, I haven't played this in forever, so I'm probably going to get my butt whooped, but I do want to just kind of go through couple minutes here, or maybe not a couple minutes, but a little bit of the game, just so you can see that there's no issues at all in the performance here. We're not seeing any screen tearing, any lags, audio cutouts, nothing at all. So everything is running just perfectly. Graphics look great too. It's funny going into games that are this old. I mean, this has got to be probably 20 years old now, or maybe just shy of 20 years old. But, you know, a decent amount of time nonetheless. And for the time period, these graphics were exceptional. And even by today's standards, I think that they're certainly still relevant. You know, they're not. It's not like we're looking at a super pixelated character or anything like that. Everything is really crisp, especially with, you know, shaders and whatnot. The background too, you're not losing any resolution. So it's really impressive. So I have no idea what I'm doing in this game right now. I have to spend a little bit of time on here, but I'm pretty much just mashing buttons at this point. That worked. I don't know how to get in the ring though. You get the point though. Everything's working great. I have no idea how to play this game. It also doesn't help probably that I'm using a PlayStation 2 style controller, but I probably can't use that as an excuse because I played Halo perfectly fine with it. So maybe I just don't know what I'm doing, but I did give Ric Flair a suplex there, so I'm gonna leave on a good note. Let's jump back out to our main menu for Xbox. All right, so now that we jumped into both of these games, we saw that everything ran 100% smooth, no lags, issues, audio cutouts, screen tearing, none of that stuff. Everything just ran super smooth and flawlessly. So I want to show you guys what your custom settings options are for the Xbox emulator. So if we went to any title on here and we held down X on a PlayStation style controller or A on a Xbox controller, we're going to pull up a bunch of options here. So if we go down to the bottom of this list, it shows us options. The second option down under options is advanced game options. So we're going to select that. And you can see here we have 3 different options, which are settings that we can change. So 3 is not a whole lot. With other emulators out there, you get a lot more. Actually, probably 3 or 4 times as many options as you have here in the Xbox emulator. So let's go through these options first and foremost though. Video mode up here at the top is going to be our resolution. So if I just scroll left or right, you can see I can adjust different resolutions here. So if I have a game that's not performing well, maybe I'm getting some slight glitches or flickers or lags or something like that, I can go in here and I can adjust my resolution. So I have it on auto, which by default is going to be the maximum, which is 1920 by 1080. This works really well. We just tested it out with 2 games. I had no issues whatsoever, but I do have a gaming PC here, so that probably is the reason that it works so well. So if I was having an issue though, I would go in here and I would just adjust it. So I would bring the resolution down a little bit. Maybe I'll try 1280 by 720, or if it's really still giving me trouble, then I'd go down to 720 by 480. So it brings the resolution down a little bit, but it makes it so your game's going to perform a little bit better on that lower resolution. So I'm going to leave it on auto because again, it was working really nicely there. And the cool thing about this is you can see right above here, it says WWE Raw 2. So you can go into specific titles and set different settings for each. We saw that with what we're going to jump into next, which is scaling. So the first game, which was Halo, was in that 4:3 aspect ratio. This was original. For this title, it was stretched. The reason for that is I went in here prior to the video and I changed the scaling mode so we could see 2 different versions. So second option is scaling mode. This isn't going to impact the actual performance of your games. This is just going to be how they look. So I have this one stretched. It doesn't stretch to full 16:9 ratio. It just stretches it a little bit, so you saw that I still had a slight border around the edges of my screen. Not a big deal, but I would love to be able to just go to full 16:9 and use up every bit of my screen. So I have a 50-inch screen. It makes sense to use 50 inches of the 50-inch screen, not 46 or 48. So I would love to see that capability here, but if I scroll left or right, I can switch it from stretch to auto. Auto is going to go with center. That's going to be that 4:8, which is what we saw on Halo. The other one is going to be scale, and then this one is stretch again, which we saw here in WWE Raw 2. So the third option down has, again, no impact on your performance. This is your short boot animation option, and it gives you the option to either skip it or to enable it and let it play. Your short boot animation is going to be your initial load-in screen when you select an Xbox title. You go through that like garbly sort of green screen looking, I don't even know what to call it, like fluid-like substance that then morphs into the Xbox logo. It takes, I think, 3 or 4 seconds. So if you are really bothered by the 3 or 4 seconds and you want to get rid of it, you can just go over here and scroll over and go to the skipped option. So I just leave it on auto, which is the normal boot method. I actually like it. I like that retro sort of boot up logo. It just takes me back to playing the original Xbox, whatever it was now, 20 years ago or so. So I like it. I leave it. It takes up an extra 3 to 4 seconds of my time. Doesn't bother me at all. So you can just customize that to your personal preference there. Again, has no impact on the actual game's performance. And in that case, it's actually just altering what leads into the game. So that alteration happens before you even get to the point where you're loading in a game. So I'm going to back out of this. Remember that we have those 3 options and what they are, because we're going to jump into the PlayStation emulator now. And I'm going to show you guys, or the PlayStation 2 emulator, and I'm going to show you all the options that you have for those specific titles in that collection. So let's back out of Xbox and let's navigate to our PlayStation 2 collection. And we're not even going to jump into a game. We're just going to jump into your game options. So here's PlayStation 2. We'll take Arctic Rush as an example here. Holding down the X button, same exact way that I did for Xbox. Go down to options and advanced game options. So we'll select this. And now let's count how many options that we have here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different options. And the next one should loop us back, and it does. Okay. So we have 14 options compared to 3 options. That's a huge difference. So let's go through here and see what we have for options. We have game ratio, which we had on Xbox. If we move through here, let me actually just select it because it'll pull up a up and down list. We can change between any of these aspect ratios, and there's some really customized ones here. We have 5:4, 4:3, 4:1, 16:9, which would use the entire screen. So that's really cool. Or we leave it on auto, which I think would be that 4:3 because that's what it was on the original PlayStation 2. I think anyways, not 100%, but I'm pretty sure it would bring us to that 4:3 centered sort of ratio. So next option down is video mode. This is going to be exactly the same as what we had on Xbox. This is where you can go in and adjust our picture resolution. So again, same deal. If you have a game that's lagging or just not running smoothly, first thing you can do is just try to lower your resolution, see if that improves the performance. It might not. It just depends really on your setup and this specific title. So I'm going to leave it on auto. Next one down is graphics backend. So you can choose your graphics rendering. So that gives you some additional options that can heavily impact your performance. We have BIOS boot logo. That's pretty much comparable to the boot animation on Xbox. Video resolution, pretty much the same as the first option, but we can go in here. And what I usually use this one for is, let's say that I'm on 1080p and it's running super well. I can try to actually improve my performance. We know that it's working on 1080p. I might try to go up here to 4x, which is 1440p, 2K, or 5x 1620p, which is 3K and 4K and 5K and so on. Might just try to soup up my performance if I'm, confident that everything's working really well. Just gives you additional capabilities and options. So next one is our enhance the quality of perspective texture. So that's just a texture setting. It does impact your performance heavily though in some cases. Skip draw hack. This is to skip frames to improve performance and increase your smoothness. This I use a lot, especially in fighting games like Tekken or Mortal Kombat, where you have a lot of movement. This can really increase your performance, so it's a great option to have. Next one is align sprite. So this removes lines in internal resolution, and it says Soul Calibur in parentheses because that's a known issue with Soul Calibur games. So I've also noticed that happens in like Tekken 6. What else? Some of the James Bond games have that as well. So if you're experiencing issues where you do have lines, on your screen, you just go into this, select it, and turn it on. If it's on auto, that automatically means that it's turned off because you don't need it for the majority of titles. But if you do experience that issue, you just go in here and you select on. And the cool thing about this is, like with Xbox, this is for each title individually. You can do this for everything in an entire collection if you want to, but I recommend doing it for each title because each title works very differently. You may experience issues with one title and not another. So you don't want to implement the same settings throughout an entire collection because every game differs quite a bit. So this is, again, you can see at the top, Arctic Thunder is the game we went into these options on. You'll have the same options for every game, but you can customize them game by game. And I do recommend doing that again. So just want to clarify that. Next option down, this is to fix heavy screen tearing in games. This is super important and a great option to have. If you're experiencing screen tearing in a game, you just go in here, same thing, select it, turn it on. It will drastically improve your performance. Game cheats, widescreen patches, which is great. Automatic game fixes. Now this is great because it selectively uses specific tested fixes for games. So it will find fixes for your individual title that you're selecting this for. So we're in Arctic Thunder. If we enable this, it's going to implement fixes specific to that title. Now, if there's not any fixes for it, then it's not going to do anything at all. But again, a great option to have. So let's go back to our list. We have manual game fixes. That can, it says cause compatibility or performance issues. So I'm not too familiar with that one, but hey, it's an additional option that we have. Any additional option is a huge bonus. So the next option down is multi-tap. This is also very important for certain titles. 14 options versus 3 is the biggest takeaway from this comparison between PS2 and Xbox emulators. And again, these were released at the same time for the most part, talking about the original consoles, that is. So they're very comparable. A lot of them have crossover games that were released on both systems. So what's really cool about that is with emulation, you can go in and let's take a title, for example, Scarface is one of my favorite games, and it was released on both platforms. So with emulation, I tested them out on both, and I actually found that the Xbox version worked better. So that's the version that I play on here. And you can do that across the board with any games that were released on both systems. So you just test them out, and whichever emulator emulates the game better, that's the one you play with. Because the major difference, some games do have different versions for each collection that they were released to, but for the most part, the only difference is in the controller that you're using. So with emulation, you can choose whatever controller you want. So I'll play Scarface on Xbox Emulation with a PlayStation 2 controller because I just prefer the PlayStation 2 controller over the original Xbox controller. So you custom tailor your gameplay experience to both what you have included in your setup and also what's available with the emulator that you're using. So that's where emulation is really cool. You can pick and choose and just customize your particular gameplay experience to your specific needs or preferences. So that's, I think, what I love most about emulation, to be perfectly honest. So this was a great way to go in and I think compare the two collections and emulators. So you can see that there's definitely more capabilities and options with PlayStation 2, but that doesn't necessarily mean that games are going to run better there. It's really hit or miss. And with the Xbox emulator, what I'd like to see is them just give you more options to adjust and tweak settings to better your overall experience. So I think we'll actually get there over time, which is why I've left some games in my collection here that don't work at all. I'm hoping that we're going to get there sooner rather than later, and maybe, you know, that'll help me to play some of the games that I'm not able to play right now. But if you're adding games and noticing that they don't work, you can obviously remove them to save space on your SSD or hard drive, whatever you're using. So, you know, you just got to kind of go and test out each title and hope for the best, because again, not a whole lot that you can do if you find that a game doesn't work within Xbox emulation. So best of luck with building your Xbox collection. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to hit me up in the comment section below, or reach out to me directly. I'm always happy to help you guys out any way that I possibly can. That's going to do it for today. If you enjoyed this video and you found the information helpful, smash the like button for me. It's a huge help. Great way to support me here on YouTube. And of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to the RetroPie Guy YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. That's a great way to stay in the loop for future videos. I do a ton of different retro gaming videos on here. We do tutorials, gameplay demos, product reviews. We have the Forgotten Favorites YouTube series every single Monday. and Thursday night. And then we do fun videos like this where we just kind of address different things within emulation and talk about emulators and performance and all that good stuff. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and check us out online on the website, www.retropieguy.com. Until next time, I'm RetroPie Guy. Thanks for watching.